Okay.
Okay. Yeah, we are live, Stefan.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Product People community event. We're very happy to have you here. This is the first time that you're here. Very welcome. We love having you. And if you've been here before, we're also very happy to see you again. The topic that we're going to be talking about today is data journey, empowering the company. And the person who is going to talk to us about this is Artur Yatsenko, and he's currently working at Urban Sports Club. He's the head of data platform and product analytics. So we're quite excited to hear what he has to say and what he can teach us today. Just before we jump into all of that, there it goes again. Just before we jump into all of that, just very quickly who I am. My name is Stefan. I'm a senior product management consultant at Product People. I originally come from South Africa. I just moved from Cape Town to Berlin about 5 months ago. And you can see a little bit of my story here on the side. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I know we're itching to get into this really cool topic. And then just very quickly about Product People. So we are interim product managers, but we can also be product leaders or heads of products or product ops on an interim basis. So that means 3+ months when maybe your product leader or your product manager went on parental leave, or you're trying to hire someone and it's a bit delayed, and we can help to fill those gaps. And our mission is we want to help companies to discover and deliver great products faster. We love onboarding fast and aligning teams and delivering outcomes. And then what we're doing tonight is also something that we really love to do. And part of what we do is creating this space for us to share knowledge, pulling in people to share their knowledge with our community as well, like we're doing tonight. And if you're here, you're part of a 26,000 plus product management community and that we've got going. So we can actually add a little one there to the 25,000 product managers that we have. And then just before we go in, we just want to start warming your brain up for the topic. And Artur has asked us to ask you these 2 questions. So if you're on Zoom, you're going to see there's a box that's going to pop up that has these 2 questions listed where you can click on them. And if you're on any of the other streaming services and you're watching us through there, you can just post it in the chat for us. Like let's say 1A and 2B or whatever. So the 2 questions that we have is what aspect do you think is the most important for successful implementation of a data first mindset? So the first answer is executive buy-in. B is curiosity of the organization to apply data. C is experimentation mindset. And D is establishing data trust. And then the second question is, do you consider AI and machine learning essential today for companies looking for important insights from their data? And then you have 5 options here. Absolutely. Yes, there are valuable technologies. Those are valuable technologies. 3 or C, somewhat, depending on the industry and context. D, not really. Other factors matter more. Or E, not at all. So for the first one, I kind of have my ideas of what I would have chosen there, but maybe it's because it's something that I like and not maybe because it's maybe the right answer. And then with the second one, I thought there was only one answer to this question, but I'd like to see if I'm wrong, and if other people have a different idea than I do. So let's see what everyone has chosen. So we'll see. This is what I was thinking as well, because with the first one, what aspects do you think is the most important for successful implementation of a data first mindset? We'll see if Artur tells us we're wrong, but I was also thinking experimentation mindset, because if you do the experiments and you don't have the data, then you very quickly will realize that you need data because you're spending time and money on something that's really cool, but not giving you any insights. And then the second question, I see there's a lot of people that are saying, yes, these are valuable technologies, but not choosing absolutely, but literally it's between absolutely and yes, those are valuable technologies. So that's more or less what I would have thought as well. But I think you have heard enough from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Artur so that he can start his presentation. I'll stop sharing and then you can take over, Artur.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. I'll take a second. Yeah, I hope you can see this then. Yeah, first of all, really humbled to be part of this community. I think it's really great to share some of the knowledge, some of the ideas as well, and the personal experiences. And I want to share with you the story of how essentially we are working with our data journey at Urban Sports Club, and what sort of lessons I learned as well from that. I think importantly that presentation is relevant for people like data analysts as well, who, for instance, want to increase the value of the data within their organizations, for the product managers who want to maybe transition to data products, and as well for data product managers who are already working with data products and still finding best ways how to highlight that across their organization. So yeah, let me share a bit of my experiences and shortly about myself as well. So I've been in Berlin for around 9 years, and I worked in a lot of different companies, which were a lot of them were product focused. So I worked at Zalando, started my journey as the product analyst. Then I also worked in Delivery Hero, which was a heavy focus on the products. And this was also the moment when I've seen how the data can actually, help to inform the decisions. Because if you work as a product analyst, you can see how a lot of those insights are being transformed into the features that could be later tested, that could be later applied for the users, that could change the course of the business as well. So this is somehow how that fusion as well comes in. And since February 22, I started working at Urban Sports Club as a product analytics role. But then in August as well, what was interesting in the part of this talk is I also took over the data platform project. So essentially, I would say I put on the product hat, to deal a little bit with, being the data owner, the product owner for the data product. And that's something that I've been working on for the past year as well within my organization. So shortly about myself. And with that, let me tell you briefly about Urban Sports Club. Some of you might know it, some of you might not. But essentially, we are a fitness sport tech subscription company. So we allow our customers to have subscription, experience a lot of different sports, a lot of different categories. We present in a couple of different countries across Europe as well. Essentially, we were founded quite a while ago, so 2012, and we have also a lot of partners within our offering. So this is one of our value that we're trying to create, that instead of just going to your gym, you can also go and try a lot of different things and be more flexible with your sports routines. One of the focus that we have within our organization is also enabling the mental and physical health of the employees. So we also focus a lot on not only B2C customers, but B2B2E customers as well, sort of to promote that inside the companies that also choose to opt out with Urban Sports Club. And as you see, we have already some story behind our brand, and that also, of course, informs a little bit the way we work with data. There's, of course, a lot of data present, and at the same time, as a challenge sometimes to analyze a lot of that massive amount of information. So that's shortly about us. And I want to give you an example of that problem statement and what I will talk about today. So we have been on the market for some time as well. We have a couple of different entities as well at Urban Sports Club and some of the brands as well. And we had a lot of the data basically distributed across different places. So that was one of the challenges, that essentially having an interoperability between the system was quite complicated. In a way, the data was sitting in different places, and the changes took some time as well. And the trust in numbers was also diminishing. At the same time, as I said, we've been working since 2012. So you can also imagine, there's some way of the tech stack that we were looking to improve, essentially, and that also led to the project in August 2022, and that's what I also started working on, that is to move to a more modern data stack, essentially to enable us doing a lot more advanced things as well that can also support our growing needs within the organization. So that was the start of the project, and that's also where I came into play to help the organization to make that transition. This is still an ongoing project, but meanwhile, I want to share with you some of the lessons that I learned along the way. But first, I want to start with some common data misconceptions. And I think there are some. Whenever you come into the organization, there are a couple of things that you perceive one way, but the organization perceives differently. For instance, that all data is the good data. Oftentimes is not the case. You really need to prioritize essentially what you are getting into your systems as well. I think is also often overlooked the way of the effort, the way that we spend into getting this data being accessible to the organizational leaders, to the end data consumers. It's often perceived that it's easy to be provided for the end consumption. And this is our role, let's say, as the analyst as well, as data engineers, as the product managers, to highlight the value that goes inside, how much essentially effort is being put into making that accessible as well. There's also misconception that the AI and the machine learning are easy to deploy. At the same time, like everybody's doing also the journey within that. I mean, more like scaling. At the same time, the whole preparation, understanding what is the right approach as well, what is the right model, how essentially orchestrating a lot of this also takes some time. So I think we need to highlight in a way how we make that available to the rest of our organization. Cleaning data is never a one-time task. It's a continuous effort as well. And reaching the data quality for the data that could be consumed, that could be relied on, I mean, is a continuous effort. And we'll talk about the data trust as well, but it's really easy to lose so the trust overnight in the numbers, but it's really hard to build this up. And for instance, if you come from the background of more of, let's say, the engineering, or also, maybe strong business backgrounds, you can understand data and numbers easily. But you should also understand that not everyone understands data the same way. And something which is really clear to you might not be the same for some of the other stakeholders you're working with. So that's why, I mean, it's important to take into account that everybody understands data differently. And some of other things is that real time is not always necessary. I mean, it's also often about the cost. There are things that could be achieved in a more simple way as well. And, as the data leaders, data professional, you need to balance out a bit of the buzzwords of the industry as well and manage the expectations of what actually makes sense for your organization. So there's some of the common data misconceptions when you come into the organization, and the organization could be also at a different data maturity stage. And I really like this chart here because it sort of explains, where you are within your organization in the data maturity stages. So if you look at the really left side here, you have more of the ad hoc, right, kind of data organization. So which is the information stored in different systems. It's a lot of the manual processes for the insights and the data management, right? At the same time, if you look at more data transformative one, that's what I would imagine, companies like, Meta and Netflix and Spotify being, where they're actually pioneering a lot of the tooling, they're pioneering a lot of the data science libraries, like open source software. They transform, how organization is using data, or like all of the, different organizations across the industry, how they can adapt to new technologies and trends. They're also quite responsive to new challenges. That what makes them data transformative. That what makes them also innovating with the data, right? I think we all want to be at the data transformative stage, but I think the question is to ask at which stage you are currently right now. If talking about the urban sports club, I mean, I think we find ourselves between data aware and data driven. There's also a couple of different stages in between, but ultimately it's embedding the process of using the data for the decision making. It's relying on a lot of the serving needs. It's having that experimentation as a part of the culture. That was also one of the warm-up questions, right? I think experimentation and innovating with data is really, really important as well as adopting the ML products. And perhaps it's not well, you would also argue that it's not relevant for all of the organizations, but I would argue that at the same time, when talking about the ML and machine learning, artificial intelligence, I mean, it's always about innovation, right? And there's always use cases that you can find to bring your organization forward as well. So before you sort of think, what are the actions that I can bring my data awareness within an organization, place yourself on this map, place yourself in the stages and understand what are the next steps you need to do in order to be more data-driven, data-aware, or data transformative. And today I want to share some of the 5 lessons that I learned during this project. So I've been working for a year doing the data transformation and data migration, sort of enabling a lot of stakeholders using data, highlighting the value of the data within an organization, trying to instigate as well as the mindset of how valuable data is for our key decisions, for the data products, for the growth of the organization. Some of the things might seem, quite obvious to you, but I think it's important to highlight them, and we'll go into detail in every one of them. So first one is, it's also a buzzword, right? But people keep talking about data as the product. And this is also something that we say, data as the product is not byproduct of an activity. So treat the data as something that creates the value, having the same sort of understanding between a lot of different consumers within an organization, that data is not a byproduct. It's not a byproduct of your engineering code or a system. That's why you need to treat that with a bit more accountability. Data quality is also overseen, right? I think this is one of the foundational topics when we talk about the data quality. You could really use, you can really have a good data quality framework, and you could really build, trust in those numbers. If the data is not qualitative enough, I think it's really not a lot of things that you can really build with the data. And the quality of your data products, which you will build later, of course, will be also diminished, right? Then essentially the third one is more about the setup. So we also learned that a more distributed tech stack can easily scale, right? So how to empower, let's say, engineering teams, how to empower analytical teams to work with a more distributed setup. And a lot of the companies are going through the same transformation, right? We're talking about data mesh, we're talking about distributed data platform. That's something what this is about. It really helps to easily scale and build up something outside, which is easier to maintain. Relate through the numbers, communicate your progress as well, share some of the ideas. I mean, you can tie numbers to practically every piece of work that you do, right? You can quantify a lot, and don't forget that as well. And last but not least is innovation with data. I think you have to encourage that experimentation mindset and innovation with data. And I can also show a couple of examples as well later. So when we talk about the data as the product, we talked a bit about this, right? But depending where you are in the organization, you need to create the data value fast, depending where you basically are, right? So for instance, starting building a bit of more those simple models that are used for critical business decisions, right? To create the crave for data. The people start being dependent on that, right? It could be like a top-level executive dashboard that is used every day as well for taking decisions. Could be data products, something like segmentations, churn analysis, forecasting as well, that is actually being used. I mean, depending what you have and what can you build in terms of your capacity, right? And when it comes to the organizational value, a lot of these efforts could be tied to the monetary value as well. The easiest way to do that, of course, was the A/B testing. You can quantify most of the results of your experiments. They move some of the metrics. They can also be tied back to the monetary value as well. So there are ways that you can also approximate how much in the end that brings value to your organization. And what I really like that people say, right? Like the analytics function shouldn't be cost-centered. They should be actually bringing value and bringing revenue. So keep that in mind as well when you think about data as a product. And then that's how we communicate as well for data strategy. We say that data for us is a unifying fabric. We look at the data as the product, not by product for our activity. And we highlight that by leveraging its value, we can induce the business growth, improve customer experience, and create new revenue streams. So that's how we also communicate within Urban Sports Club to bring that a bit up. data quality is the paramount. Cannot be stressed enough, right? But what the way you should do as well is like start measuring simple use cases to ensure the source data is reliable. And as I said, it's easy to lose the trust. You can lose the trust in numbers. Sometimes people complain about the data and they mention, that is wrong, but you need to often drill down to understand what exactly is being wrong. What we're trying to do right now is to onboard our tech teams and to share, the data quality observability tooling with them and say, hey, you can set up your own tests. You can monitor the production data tables as well. We can't be in charge for this data because there's something coming from your systems as well. We want to instigate a mindset when essentially people can test their data on their own and have the full accountability cycle. And it's also important to communicate the data consumers that they can rely on the information that they're getting, that they're seeing in their dashboards as well, that they take decisions on, right? I mean, often they don't have that visibility. We need to create that visibility within our teams. That's why I think data quality is one of the important factors and the lessons I've learned as well along the way. Lesson number 3 is of a distributed approach. As I said, I mean, we also been, a while as well in the industry. So we found ourselves that, that was the more of the, let's say, imagine monolithic setup, right, of the data infrastructure. We wanted to break it down in a way to give more flexibility to the teams, give more sort of way for them to contribute easily, so the data engineering team does not become a bottleneck, right? I think this also unlocks the way to innovate with the data. If somebody can make changes to the code, creating more models easily without being, going through rigorous checks as well, but then having the global standards and guidelines, I mean, that really helps to create new value, right? You want to encourage people to innovate. You want to encourage people to discover the data, essentially. So in a way that we're looking into that is having sort of global standards, going into more data mesh architecture as well. Right now, it's more of a distributed data platform where the changes could be done way faster as well. And the changes are easy to be deployed and easy to be added, especially for the data by the data professionals. So I think, infrastructure is one of the important steps here, and having that distributed approach. Measuring progress is one of the other lessons that I learned. If, let's say, you're working on a project like, the data migration, if you're working about, let's say, as a data analyst on experimentation, you can always relate that through the numbers, right? For instance, with the project, once we started doing this as well, we've seen a lot of increase in metrics, and that's something we try to communicate across the organization as well. We've seen almost 400% of improvement in data processing time. We decreased our pipelines from 6 hours to 1.5 hours. I mean, it sounds like a big number, right? But that's something that we want to communicate and say, this is that way much better, because we have a better way, a better stack, more modern stack as well, easier way to work with the models. We also monitor our data quality, test fail rates, essentially understanding, how much from the existing test setup, is failing over the time for let's say last 7 days. We also load a lot of information. So it's about 150 million rows per month approximately. And we also maintain quite a lot of amount of data models as well, more than 320 right now. But these are some of the things that when you think about, the progress of any project as well, I think the most important is to measure the progress, right? And showcase and highlight and putting that value back and saying this actually is how much work is being done behind the scenes when we talk and creating the value for the data within our organization. And the last lesson that I learned as well is to empower people to innovate with data. We need to allow them to explore and prototype solutions faster with that, right? So it talks about the data discoverability, easy access, more self-serve as well. One of those examples, recently what we've done was part of the hackathon days. The data engineers, the product analytics team, the software engineers came together and they said, okay, why don't we do a default ranking algorithm for the non-logged in users to boost our conversion rate? And that was something that was born out of 2 days hack week that we do every 6 weeks. And they were able to come up with a simple way to really rank our partners specifically for the non-logged in users to help them make the decision if they want to sign up or not. And I think that seen an increase of around 10% of some of the micro conversion rate, not the full conversion rate, but the micro conversion rate, just to make those decisions more informed, right? And this idea just came from the cross collaboration. Somebody had that, we had access to the data, it was discoverable. People said, okay, why don't we try this out, right? I think it's a really cool example of creating this type of data products where you can collaborate with a lot of different team members as well, and you can actually come up with those ideas quite easily in prototype. This is the innovation that you want to achieve specifically. And sharing a bit like what we are looking to focus on next, right? So for us at Urban Sports Club, there's a lot of different things. I mean, if I would put on some pillars here, I mean, it's definitely machine learning, artificial intelligence. It's reporting data visualization, comes to data. It's a faster decision-making, and it's a distributed data platform. So things like wider adoption of ML, generative AI, looking about the AI ethics, responsible use is quite important within the industry as well. We also want to achieve a better data discoverability, reporting, curation of the data sets that are available to everyone within an organization. On the side for the faster decision-making, we want to have a central data collection strategy, use the information from a lot of the services directly, utilizing the microservice architecture to stream near real-time events or systems. And at the same time, as I mentioned as well, empower people to build faster, let's say, data models, looking into more distributed data platform and data mesh principles as well. And the last thing, what I would leave you with, maybe some of other additional strategies to increase the data awareness. Also seen within the industry, like we're trying different things, right? How we can share that with the rest of the organization. What can we do essentially to increase the data awareness? Is using some of the lean manufacturing ideas to focus on the most impactful things, right? I think there often is an amount of things that we want to focus all at the same time, right? But if you want to bring the value for data, you need to select what is the most impactful for the organization. If you're talking even about the analysis dashboards, data models, right? It's all about the prioritizing. If you need to create the value fast, you need to identify what will create the value faster and show the value of the work that you do. Training and upskilling is another one of them, right? So enabling people discover using self-serve, using the tooling that you have available for them. I mean, it also works, right? To kind of alleviate the pressure from the teams, from analytical teams, essentially, but also allow people to innovate more. Having good discoverability and overview of the collected data, that also brings up but to the topic of the data innovation and having the experimentation mindset. Often is also not being afraid to fail, but also if you fail, you can learn something from that, right? I think this one was most important within A/B testing as well. It's not often that your experiment will be successful in the first try. You might take 3-4 different iterations, well, to make it right? To actually have that uplift and that metric that can bring the value for your, say, product tree, driver tree as well, right? And one thing that also we've seen and tried is open office hours for data requests, deep dive breakdown, take people with you, show them how, let's say, you do the storytelling, how, let's say, you build certain things, right? And, allow them to come up with the hypothesis, come with the ideas, and show them what is your thought process, right? I think people also start valuing that way more. They understand how much effort is going into, creating, some of those insights that you're sharing with them as well. And that's how some of the strategies that you can increase data awareness within an organization, depending which step you are along the way. So yeah, these are my key takeaways. I want to thank you for listening of some of those lessons. I definitely learned a lot along the way and keep learning as well. And I hope that some of that will be also applicable to some of your use cases.
Thank you, Artur. And if you can then unshare, then I can share my screen again. Great, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed your talk, because data can sometimes be quite a daunting topic for a lot of people to talk about, and you kind of made it very human for us today, which I think was really not an easy thing to do. So thank you for that. So now, everyone, I'm just going to very quickly talk about product people for a very quick second, just to give everyone a chance to digest what we've just heard and come up with your questions. I see we have gotten some questions already. But yeah, so while you think about it, I'm just quickly going to talk about product people as well. So the use cases when product people are best to engage with is when you need an interim or fractional product manager or product leader, when let's say you're busy hiring and it's taking longer than you thought, someone is going on parental leave, or you have this massive new important thing, initiative or product that's coming up and you need a product team to stand behind it. And we can help fill those gaps. Also as a product coach or consultant, and also within product discovery. And then there are certain things that we're not doing. So one of these are we're not recruiters, so we're not sourcing candidates, and that also links into we're not a freelance marketplace. So all the people that work at product people are actually on the payroll and full-time employees of product people. They've been hired by product people and they're doing a service to the company. So we're not recruiters or freelance marketplace. And we're also not a development or design agency. If you do need development or design people, you can always talk to us and we'll be happy to introduce you to a few companies that we think are pretty good. But our focus is mostly on product management, including product ops and leadership. And then this is some of the B2C clients that we've worked with that we're very proud of to say that we've worked with, and also the B2B clients as well. And here's just some of the positive feedback that we've gotten from our clients before as well. One of like a few of many, but I'm not going to read through it today. And then just some product people stats. So we've supported over 200 cross-functional teams. We have 40 product leaders and product managers in our team. And a stat that most of us are pretty proud of, almost the most proud of, is that we have 60% women in the team and 66% of our leadership is also women. And this is our team. This is all our faces here. And if you'd like to also add your face to this picture, we are hiring associate product management consultants. So you can go to this link, which is boards.eu.greenhouse.io/product people. We also have easy apply on LinkedIn now. And you can also reach out to some people that work at product people if you can't find the link or struggling. Okay, so now that's done. We can go into the question and answer segment. So Artur, we got a question from Isaac. He was asking, when considering data as a product, how do you deal with the situation that there are different product teams with different data needs? Shouldn't data be part of those individual teams, or do you envision a separate data team?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Let me, start answering, and then maybe you can also elaborate a bit more on the setup. Depends on the setup, I think, of the company and the team. When there are multiple product teams, like one thing that we've seen was working quite well is also embedded setup. When you have, let's say, analytical professionals like being part of those product teams and helping them sort of creating the value for data, helping them with the decisions, right? But at the same time, you could also have more of a governed, central data team, as well as smaller data teams that kind of contribute, let's say, to that distributed data platform or data mesh, let's say, as a part of those product teams. So that's what I've seen also working well. And the Delivery Hero is an example. I mean, they also have a data mesh concept that's being implemented successfully. So it really depends on which stage you are. That's what I can say. Hope that answers the question a little bit.
Thank you, Artur. Let us know if it doesn't, Isaac, and then we can ask again. And then sorry if I'm going to butcher this next person's name. I hope it's Kitsiltan or Kisiltan. They are asking, assuming that the data strategy is in line with the company strategy, leadership buy-in, then there's 3 questions. How do you align the data analytics output with the overall company strategy? Second question, what are the decision-making processes you follow to make sure that the initiatives the data teams lead contribute to the company strategy? And then thirdly, how do you communicate that to the organization?
All right, so I'll try to tackle one by one. So I think aligning the data analytics output with overall company strategy. At the same time, I think it's really helpful when you have a good sponsor, right, from the organizational level. Let's say, a chief product officer that helps align a bit of the strategy of your organization as well and highlight the value of the data. At the same time, what also quite works well is having a bit of more common OKRs, right? I mean, if you're following the objective key results process as well, the data team could have, a couple of objectives that relate to the company strategy as well. And that's how you can also easier link that to the overall company success and their strategy. Let's say, if the strategy of the company is to, let's say it's really sales-oriented. For some reason, they're looking into like signing up so much more deals, right, in a way, but they need the robust data reporting for that, right? So one of the objectives for the company could be like for the team could be to say like we want to enable that reporting so that every sales manager can take a decision on that. Sales is really one example, but let's talk maybe about the product. Nevertheless, you can relate that back to sort of the company objective. Right, I think that helps well to align a little bit, right? Sort of like having that high-level overview and high-level objective key results. So I think that works sometimes quite well. Regarding the decision-making process, how to make sure that the initiatives of data team lead contribute to company strategy. It's in the same way. I think it's often about communication. Let's say, why do we do what we do? Why does the data team is working on that algorithm in a way? How is that bringing an impact within an organization? It's all about communication in a lot of different channels and, highlighting the value of what exactly, the teams are doing. Because often, as I said, data is not perceived equally by everyone. And maybe some business stakeholders, for them, it's like they don't really understand why you're doing that. That's the kind of like algorithm, let's say, right? But in a way, you can basically say this is how we're contributing. This is how much more, revenue we're trying to generate, or like, improve someone's life internally, right? This is what the product we're being built. So that's something that could help as well to showcase the value of and follow that sort of the strategy. Trying to find the third question. Let me check.
It was how do you communicate that to the organization? But I think you also kind of answered that.
Yeah, I think what I find is like there is no over communication, right? I mean, you have to often share in a language that is more applicable, let's say, to the business leaders. What sort of things are you doing and your team is doing, and how that actually helps to improve their life, their everyday life. It's like building up the communication strategy, sharing a more general channel in a way. It's a tedious process, but it pays off in the end, right? People at least have that ingrained in the mindset, in my opinion.
Thanks, Artur. And then we have a question from Ziad. They said, hi, Artur, nice talk. You mentioned a modern data stack. Could you please share how is it in Urban Sports Club and the reasoning behind those choices?
The question is more about the architecture, right? I can also mention that. I mean, also we have Open Tech Creator. If you know the concept of the Tech Creator, you can see the technology that we're using. The Urban Sports Club, the languages, tools, and the frameworks, they're accessible online. So you can search for Tech Creator at Urban Sports Club. And one of the reasons, we moved from the Postgres. We're moving from the Postgres to BigQuery as our analytical data warehouse solution, because it's also easier to scale, right? It's also a managed service that we don't really have to think much about maintaining a lot of, uptime and sort of, the capacity and resources than, let's say, a self-managed instance of the Postgres. At the same time, we also enable teams to contribute more easily with DBT, which is data build tool. It's quite, now become a thing as the standard on the market, when you talk about the data modeling for the whole lineage of the, data modeling, data tooling as well. So that's something that we also adopt to allow people to contribute easily to the data platform. So if somebody has a knowledge of SQL, they can build their own data models. We have checks in place that, prevent them to breaking someone else's models. They cannot do any merges. So that works quite well. And we also leverage a lot of no-code or low-code platforms for ingestion. So what we used to do before, when we talked about ingesting data, we would build a lot of the pipelines our own. So we would build, read from the database replica. Do some transformation, put that in in the destination. What we decided is like faster is when you can leverage tools, and there's a lot of them on the market, like Stitch, like Airbyte. There's some more as well. I mean, there are data stream from Google and things like that. So we also try to leverage some of them to really not do a lot of work so not spend time of engineers working to prototyping and building, this API programming, so to say, but it's easier like to really do that with low code effort. So we can focus on something which is more challenging as well to work from a code perspective. So these are some of the main pillars that we try to decouple a lot of things and enable analyst engineers to work faster and contribute easier to our data platform stack.
Well, thank you, Artur. And then I also have a question myself that I wrote down while you were talking. But and I might remember these wrong, but I think you had the different stages as ad hoc, data aware, data driven, and data transformative, I think, right? And in your experience, what do you think is like the one or the two biggest challenges between each of these steps, like between ad hoc to data aware and between data aware to data driven? What's the biggest challenges that we should be aware of once we figure out where we fall in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is, it might be easier to move from, like data ad hoc to like more of a data aware, but it may be really hard to move from data was like, well, aware, and there was one previously before the data transformative, right? So I mean, essentially the step
data driven, I think.
Yeah, data driven. Yeah, exactly. To data transformative. There's no single recipe, right? And I think like the challenges is in a way, I mean, maybe more about successes and like the winning recipe. The winning recipe is, I think, hiring like really good people, like good experts within their field, right? And then also simplifying a lot of the mundane work. So let's say if we're working like with data ingestion, we really try to make it minimum as possible in a way, so we can free up time for more experimentation. Building this sort of things faster is helping that innovation as well for the data. I think it's leveraging a lot within the industry, what's happening, trying to stay abreast of like, the challenges as well. But at the same time, it's constant communication to change the mindset, of people, right? I mean, within your organization, and it's not something that happens over time. You might spend a couple of years as well on that, right? But I think the winning recipe is really hiring good people, investing in good software as well, reviewing whatever you're doing, trying to innovate as well, and sort of like communicate constantly the value of the data that you create within for your organization.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Artur. And then let's say you are in an organization where there is a product analyst and there is a product manager. What is the product manager's main role in getting a company to be data transformative? Is it about being a data master themselves, or about being a really great team player for that data analyst or product analyst?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think the best sort of collaboration that I've seen is like when the product manager is really curious. I mean, and they really are avid about bringing those insights like out. They're really happy to share whatever the team are doing and sharing that back to the corporate, like the driver tree metrics that they have, and the part that they can influence. And the way that they collaborate with the product analyst, as an example, is like really driving a lot of the hypothesis. So I think they have to stay curious. They have to understand the data. As well, then they definitely need to have like good data literacy, and with that, if they stay curious, I mean, that can generate a lot of more hypotheses, right? And they start generating hypotheses, the team start experimenting a bit more. They see the results of their work. It's easier to relate back through experimentation, and in such a way, I mean, the organization also gets more sort of like information about what's happening and how they're doing this kind of like transformation. And I think if that product manager can do like and kind of implement those ideas, I mean, I think we all can, right? And that's like where you start, a chain of like change of the mindset, and people start, okay, let's do some more like experiments, let's do innovation and prototype. So that what I see is like curious people are the one that are leading the change, and the one who is like accountable and want to own bring back the value.
Okay, so it's like almost also like having that learner type of mentality. You don't necessarily know everything about data, but you're curious about it and you want to learn more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are never knowing everything, for sure. I mean, as long as we're curious, I mean, that's the way we can, grow, and sort of like we always need to reinvent, right? I mean, the same way architecture-wise, I mean, never stays the same, right? We need to look into different tooling, simplest ways, to ease our work. I mean, a lot about the machine learning as well, our, AI, generative AI, right? There's a lot of potential that we can leverage, right? And as long as we know what's happening within the industry, we always need to adapt. And the more informed we are, the more faster we can adapt. And I think that applies to data as well.
And would you say, for a product manager, if you had to answer this question today and not thinking about the future and everything, but a minimum level of data literacy that you think would help them be comfortable to successfully contribute to this, or do you think that changes depending on where you are?
No, I think there definitely needs to be a minimum level of data literacy, and most importantly is then I think whenever the product manager comes with a hypothesis, let's say, and they present it with the evidence, and they are not rigorous in the mind and say, oh no, that actually doesn't make sense, right? That actually lies in a way, where they're not susceptible for understanding the hard evidence. When they actually are flexible in the mind, and they're like, oh, actually, I don't really know how this works. Can you teach me how to? I have no idea about the data, right? I think this type of mindset is like, they don't have to be maybe, super tech savvy in a way. Of course, I mean, they can grow into this, but if they have the curiosity and flexibility, they can, start asking better hypotheses, or, like start testing something themselves. So yeah, I've been talking a lot about the experimentation and testing, but I think the curiosity and the flexibility of the mindset is something that is really needed in a product manager.
Wow, thank you so much, Artur. I don't think we have any other questions that came in, but I think this was such a really cool talk. I think there isn't much questions left after you've talked to us, so I think we can wrap up if there's not any other questions coming in. But thank you, Artur. I think it was an awesome talk, and you really, I think you're like very, very smart, and you've kind of like brought it down for all of us to kind of really nicely understand. So that was really nice. And I think all of us could make sense out of what you were saying as well. So I really appreciate it. And I think everyone enjoyed it.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks a lot for having me here.
Thank you.
Oh, there are some comments from
awesome talk, and you really, oh, are they? Sorry, Juan Pablo or Jakub, did one of you say something?
Sorry. Thanks a lot for having me here.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so we will finish the stream now.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah, there's YouTube questions actually.
Oh, I think we can stop it and then I'll answer that question.